origin of my being here today. First of all, I'm in the back, and that is the first time I've heard a Cactus sack chant break out, which is like music to my ears. That's great, because the more you chant, the less I have to do. As many of you are aware, I recently left WWE. Were you aware of that? And to their credit, when I was an ambassador, they gave me great leeway to pursue my own personal projects. The only time they absolutely positively said no was when I asked if I could be a guest on ICP Theater. The word came back and said, WWE talent is forbidden to appear with ICP. On the day my contract ran out, I called my agent and said, let's see if you can get me a spot on The Gathering. So here I am. Does anyone know the origin? Why the hell the hardcore legends carrying a lacrosse stick on the stage? Alright, stories out there. I gotta tell you, when I accepted this gig, I was at The Gathering one time before, 3 years ago, and some helpful fans were nice enough to send links to me showing some previous guests who had not exactly been showered with kindness from the Juggalos. They were in fact being showered with other things. Among them bodily fluids and solids. I'll be completely honest, I've been blown up, I've been set on fire, I've landed on 10,000 thumbtacks. I've never been so terrified in my life. So before I went on that plane, I made 2 purchases. I stopped off at a Walgreens and bought a rain poncho, even though it wasn't scheduled to rain. And I stopped by the lacrosse warehouse for a lacrosse stick, because back in the day I used to be a goaltender. Hadn't picked up a stick in 25 years. And the guy at the store saw me working in the pocket. And he was like, you gonna play some lax, Mick? And I said, nope. Caught him by surprise, because it's not like a tennis racket or a baseball bat. There's multiple uses. Like, you usually only pick up a stick and see the stick. I see that this young man's confused. I'm gonna clear this up for you momentarily, okay? And he goes, what are you gonna do with it? And I said, catch some shit. And he said, oh, what kind of shit? And I said, human shit. And then, as it turned out, man, it was like this, man. You guys got respect for me, and I appreciate that. I was back in 20 minutes into it, such a love, and I was like, hey, will someone throw a beer can so I can block it and write this stick off on my taxes? Even better this year. It'd be great if no one throws anything, because as you can see, the tag is still on this bad boy. I can't return it with poop on it, lady. So we're looking for a poop-free evening, and I'm going to return this bad boy. Matter of fact, I'm going to show it, I'm going to lay it down. I don't think I'm going to need this here. But I got to tell you, listen, I know there's going to be a lot of yelling, hollering. It's okay if you yell stuff out, it's all right. Normally, in an intimate gathering, it's not okay to yell stuff out. And I remember being in Erie, Pennsylvania. For those of you who don't know, and say, hey, Mick does stand up, he's like, well, he's not even telling jokes. I don't really tell jokes. Like, I don't come out, for example, and say, hey, what's the difference between Al Snow and the 100 Years' War? No, I don't do that type of thing. No, I don't need to. Oh, what's the answer? Well, if I was going to do that type of thing, which I don't, the answer would be, at a certain point, the 100 Years' War was over. Boom! But I don't do that type of thing. This is a wrestling-centric storytelling show, which will include a question and answer session. And all I ask when it comes to time to ask the questions, don't be that guy who asks that question and we know what question I'm talking about, right? Don't be the guy who sits there, raises his hand, and goes, "Did it hurt?" When the Undertaker threw you off the cell? It's like 16 years I felt like Bill Murray in an episode of Groundhog's Day that never, ever ends. But one day, it's like the day before, someone walks up and says, "It was the first time I've ever been asked, did it hurt?" Got to the point where I was in Washington, D.C., at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, visiting injured service members. And I'm not telling the story, I'm not telling this to brag about visiting injured service members, even though I was in Washington, D.C., visiting injured service members. USA! And the guide for USL told me that Tiger Woods was there that same day, and she goes, "You know what's so surprising is the troops are actually more excited to see you." And she said, "Isn't that great?" And I said, "No." Would seem on the surface to be a great thing, right? And she was a little baffled. She said, "Why?" I said, "Because I know what Tiger Woods made last year, and I know what I made. They're not even in the same ballpark." And before that little escapade in the Escalade a few years ago, Tiger made most of his money as a product company pitchman who didn't actually say anything. He would just like crouch over the 18th hole, and if I could crouch I would, but I can't, so I'll bend awkwardly at the waist. Just crouch over the 18th hole and there'd be the words, "Be a tiger." And that in WrestleSpeak had heat with me, juggalos. Because when I was a product company pitchman for Chef Boyardee overstuffed beef ravioli, I had to put out. I had to jump out of the brush and say things like, beefy, in a wild animal park. And for the climactic scene, the director wanted to know if I could get a giraffe to chase me while I held a can of overstuffed beef ravioli aloft. And I said, "I don't think so." And he dared to question my hardcore credentials. I said, "It has nothing to do," yeah, my testicular fortitude, absolutely, sir. And I said, "It has nothing to do with that." And he goes, "Well, what's the problem?" And I said, "Sir, giraffes are herbivores. Not likely to crave Chef Boyardee overstuffed beef ravioli." And he said, "Well, what can we do?" I said, "Why don't we find out what giraffes do eat, replace the ravioli with that, and see what happens." So guess what happened? That big son of a bitch chased me for like 200 yards. And I know people out there think that wrestlers are actors. Trust me when I tell you I can't act as terrified as I looked in that commercial. So I guess therefore I could have been a little bit nicer to Tiger Woods when I finally met him.
Tiger Woods! Yeah!
Alright, let it out, let it all. Alright.
Funky with Mr. Taco!
Those little green lights. Anyway, I guess I could have been nicer as I said, "Hey, how you doing?" And he looked at me and goes, "Hey, pal, we have some kind of a problem?" Whitest white guy I'd ever met is Tiger Woods. And I said, "No." And he goes, "Hey, cut the malarkey. I'm a white guy, I haven't used the word malarkey in a lifetime. Here's Tiger Woods using it on me." And I said, "I'm sorry." And I told him that thing about using the words, how much pride I took. He made a lot more money than me. And I said, "It's my fault." And he goes, "No problem there, fella. What do you say we bury the hatchet?" Shook hands and he goes, hey fella, can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." And he goes, "Did it hurt?" When the Undertaker threw you off that cell? So don't be that guy, okay? Now, as you may have detected, there's another thing about a Foley show. I only drop one F-bomb per show. That's kind of commendable, given that a DDP needs 4 of them to describe the birth of a fuzzy puppy. Right? I know it's a frequently used word. I heard Tech 9 throwing it out there a little bit. But to me, the F-bomb on this stage is like the pile driver on the concrete. You wait till the end and you hit it with a big. Reminds me of my days in Japan when I was wrestling a guy named Shoji Nakamaki. Perhaps known better to you as Lama Namanumi. And we'd have tacks and barbed wire and bricks and all these things. I'd throw Nakamaki into the guardrail, he'd come up bleeding, I'd be like, Well, what the hell am I going to do now? What's all the barbed wire for? So we're going to hold back, drop that F-bomb like it's a pile driver in the concrete, see if we can't bring everybody home on a high note, okay? And we do have those questions. Line those bad boys up. Before we get to that, all right, and my reasoning for giving the question, I'm going to give you a couple examples of the worst show. This is working out pretty good, man. You guys are being really cool. I really appreciate it. Thank you. We've got a couple Santas in the crowd. Well, like I said, I don't tell jokes. I do tell stories that will build into laughs, but I was in the middle of that story building process in Erie, Pennsylvania a few months ago, when I said something that caught me by surprise because it caused somebody to do a legitimate bona fide spit take. Something so funny they could no longer control their beverages. It took me about 2 seconds to realize it was not a genuine bona fide spit take, but the young man had in fact projectile vomited on the woman in front of him, causing the woman's quite muscular boyfriend to jump up and say, "Hey dude, what the heck? What the heck, man?" And it was just like this dim gloom was cast over my entire show. I just sat there, and the only thing I could think to do was imitate Mr. McMahon and be on the mat and go, he's gonna puke. Every time I tried to build a little momentum, I'd hear this guy yelling out the name of this guy I used to wrestle with named The Rock. Who had a lot of potential at one point. I don't know what happened there. And I said, "Rock," and he yelled out, "Rock!" And I looked at him and I said, "Yes, you are correct, sir." And then I went to the left side of the stage and I began a different story, and yet he still yelled out The Rock's name. I looked over and I saw he was holding up a photo. Went to the left side, he yelled out The Rock's name again. I looked back and I could see that he was holding up the Xbox 360 with The Rock's likeness on it. I said, "You are correct for a third time." Now on time 9, I was getting tired of it. The guy was killing my momentum. And I said, "Hey, come on up here, buddy. Let me take a look at that." And he handed me the Xbox 360, and I was in mid-fling when I had a flashback to my days in the ECW arena. Any of you guys make the pilgrimage to the old ECW arena back in the day? And you would know it was in fact not an arena at all, but a converted bingo hall next to a dollar store, where for a 10 spot, these maniacal fans from across the country and the world could load up on a cornucopia of cheap weaponry. It was considered a badge of honor to hand a cheap $1 aluminum frying pan to your favorite wrestler to use on his opponent. No harm, no foul. Yeah, you could get a cheese grater at the dollar store. And so, in 1995, I was in the middle. Like I said, there's a flashback of my days in the ECW arena. I was in the middle of swinging what I thought was a $1 aluminum frying pan when I realized it's a cast iron skillet. And it would be 3 days before the Sandman knew the sound of his own name. I had that similar flashback right there in Erie in mid-fling as I looked at that young man, got a good look and went, "He's got special needs." Because I tried to more or less check my swing. It was an awful fling and it just kind of skipped limply off the stage, plopped unceremoniously on the floor, and this poor young man ran after it. And I just felt like such a dick. I don't know if you guys have heard the rumors about me and my thriftiness on the road. Well, they're true. They're damn true. All right? Hard-earned, but despite the legendary thriftiness, they appreciate the thriftiness, right, brother? Despite that legendary thriftiness, as soon as that show was over, I grabbed the club manager and said, "Load that kid up with as much free Mick Foley memorabilia as you can carry." And now we're friends on Facebook. So it worked out pretty good. But before we take some questions, I'm going to tell you why I do this. Why, first of all, is, we don't know what I'm going to say. It lets people rest at ease, knowing they're going to get the chance to answer the wrestling questions. But from a selfish perspective, sometimes you guys will come up with questions I wouldn't have thought of that jog a memory that result in a story that I might end up using as part of my show. And that was the case a while back where a guy raised his hand. He said, I want to know what the strangest thing you've ever seen in your career was. Was it losing your ear in Munich, Germany? I thought about it, legitimate question, right? Not only was losing my ear strange, but the circumstances surrounding it were strange. The only time that I know of, both English-speaking referees have been sent home, one due to a knee injury, the other due to a death in the family, and have been replaced by a French referee who spoke no English, was therefore unable to tell either me or my opponent Vader that he had my ear in his hand. So we just kept wrestling, because that's what fake wrestlers do. And all of a sudden, I was thinking back to a time in 1997 when I was in Germany. I told the guy, I said, that's not even the strangest things that happened to me in Germany. I began telling that story about walking in Frankfurt, in a part of the city called the Red Light District, where there were rumors of live sexual acts taking place on stage. And I was curious because I'd never seen one of those live on stage. And so I went with 3 of my cohorts who shall remain nameless. No, we know that's the response. I'll protect their images. That's the responsible thing to do. And we walked into that club. I opened up the door. It was like going from black and white Kansas to brilliant Technicolor Oz. There was this guy, and he just looked like a sexual gladiator. And he was fornicating. He was putting on a show. I mean, this guy's penis was almost impossibly large. It was pumping with piston-like power and precision, which is an author's tool known as alliteration. Yeah. No one else in the room, me with my wrestler's trained eye for detail, noticed something that no one else seemed to observe at all. I noticed that this sexual gladiator was putting on the performance of a lifetime. His own possibly large penis pumping with piston-like power and precision was doing it while wearing a knee brace. He was working hurt. And so I said to the first member of our party, I said, hey, Rock. Yeah, you guys aren't recording this, are you? Take a look at the guy's knee brace. And the Rock looked, because how could you not when I'm specifically drawing attention to the knee brace? It's the first time I remember him raising the people's eyebrow. I said to the other member of our party, second member, who had specifically asked me to remain nameless, I said, look at that knee brace, and he looked. How could he possibly not look when I was drawing his attention directly to it? I said to the final member of our party, who I'll just refer to for tonight as Al Snow. And I said, Al, look at that knee brace. I said, Al, look at that knee brace, and Al Snow just went. I said, Al, look at the guy's knee brace, and Al just went. I got a little perturbed. I said, Al, for crying out loud, we look at the guy's knee brace, and Al just went. He was locked on that big cock. Locked on that cock, as if you remember Navy SEAL Team 6, ready to take out a high-value target. Locked on that cock, sir, like he was Zack Ryder. Looking for the last remnant of his push. Locked on that cock, man, as if he was Dr. Hannibal Lecter, preparing to dine on a human liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti. I was looking for that tongue sound, ready? With some fava beans and a nice Chianti. Excellent work, sir. And then it was over. It just ended. Or at least I thought it ended. I had reason to believe it ended. There was evidence to suggest that it ended. Left behind a trail of evidence. And a new act went on stage as if that other one had never been there to begin with. But I couldn't take my eyes off that magnificent warrior as he hobbled to the back part of the room. limping noticeably. And I remembered once what the Godfather had told me about limping. It ain't easy. And I watched as he made his way to the back part of the room, where he sat down and put his arm around his one true love, who was a dude. And I thought, ladies and gentlemen, that's dedication. I don't know who the dude was. There's no secret wrestling identity to the dude, you know? All right, with that in mind, let's take a few questions, all right? All right, you've been all right, listener, go ahead, man. Well, no, you don't get the mic, you yell it out. Okay, go ahead.
Who throws the hardest potatoes?
Oh, hardest potatoes would be...
Vader, Stone Cold, Terry Funk.
Oh man, yeah, that's a good threesome there. Yeah, I was terribly dejected when the first time I wrestled Terry, because I thought Terry threw the greatest wrestling punch in the business, and I wanted to learn the secret of it. And then as soon as we locked up in Japan, he punched me as hard as he could in the head, and I went, that's no secret. It was a disappointment. Hold on one second. And while Steve Austin's punches were no walk in the park, especially on the receiving end of them, when he was making a comeback, in my history, no one's punches compared to Vader's for their stiffness. Like, he was in a league of his own. I saw, back at Center Stage Theater in Atlanta, Georgia, your name would be up on a chalkboard against your opponent that night. On 4 different occasions, I saw a young man walk up to that blackboard, keeping in mind their hopes, dreams, and ambitions tied up in being a professional wrestler. I saw them look at their name on the blackboard against Vader and retire. Just look at their friends and go, this business isn't for me, Joey. And off they'd go. I'd watch them take that long, lonely walk down Peachtree Street, never be seen or heard from again. Good question, though. Yeah, undoubtedly it was Vader. Yeah, all right, we got a young man there. Oh, the Undertaker thing. You're going to be that guy, huh? I'll tell you what I do. I'll tell you what, I'm going to incorporate that into my ending story because, man, I didn't believe it until I saw it. I'd heard rumors, but until I opened up the door in Austin, Texas about 12 days ago and saw the Undertaker standing there in front of me, I thought there's no way he's coming to one of my shows. So we had a chance to catch up and reminisce about a couple of things that are going to lead me to my final story, okay? So let's take a couple more. No, it's not that guy, it's those guys. I'll cover that in the last story, okay? Anyone have a non-Hell in a Cell wrestling question? Yes? What's my favorite match today? What? My favorite match ever was probably Backlash against Randy Orton, 2004. I came back, I really had been away for 4 years, and I came back at WrestleMania, first time in 4 years, and people were patting me on the back, and they were telling me I had a great match, and I knew in my heart I really hadn't. It was actually Stone Cold who came up to me almost the end of the show, and he went, "Kid, we've known each other a long time, haven't we?" I said, "Yeah," and he goes, "You consider me to be a straight shooter?" And I said, "Yeah," and he looked me right in the eye and he said, "You dropped the ball out there tonight." Man, it hurt so bad because I knew he was right, and so I came back a month later. She said, this isn't going to be one of those bloody things, is it? And I went, "Oh yeah. Oh yeah." And it was, but it was really good. All right? All right. Who's got it? All right, over there, stand up. Any of the guys from Psychopathic Records have a question? Any of you guys? Yeah, let me hear it. All right. Thank you, brother. Appreciate being here. Go ahead.
Will you ever wrestle for $2
He did a lot of the same stuff I did, but for a lot longer and for a lot less money, which puts him and Sabu kind of in a class of their own. So yeah, man, and tough guy, a crazy guy, but a smart guy too, man. A lot of respect for him, and he was awesome in The Wrestler, man. That even made me cringe, you know? All right, we have a person out there with a question. We'll take like 3 more. Go ahead. Slippers, sweatpants, a fanny pack, and 2 Santa Claus shirts. That's how I roll. All right, let me have a question right there. Why am I, man? I'll be honest with you. I watched WWE Network, WWE Countdown about the top 10 tag teams. And while I was flattered that The Rock and I were listed at number 4, I was, honestly, man, I was shocked by some of my fashion choices.
Rocket sock! Rocket sock! Rocket sock! Rocket sock! Rocket sock!
The Rock would appreciate that. I looked at the thing and I was like, man, from the bright blue sweatpants I wore when I was teaming up with The Rock to like the ill-fitting sports coat that WWE used to require me to wear to the Native American fringe jacket that was offensive to all Native Americans. I just looked at it like, as long as I'm going to be making all these fashion errors, I might as well make one that allows me to carry around 2 weeks of stuff on my waist. And I went back to the pack, man. And so we reminisced, and man, up until that point, I'd completely forgotten that during that infamous cell match, that he had a broken bone in his foot. Remember that, okay? And then up until last April, when I was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, I really did live in dread of people coming up to me with questions, because I knew that every question, like I said, was going to be, did it hurt? Like I just dreaded it. And then I was very lucky that April of 2013, I was inducted not only in an arena, Madison Square Garden, that had meant a lot to me, the arena I grew up hitchhiking to, with an N, so technically I'm still at 0 on my up-bomb meter, am I not? It's pretty commendable, right? And he, for the first time, shed light on words that were exchanged between he and The Undertaker during that match that would forevermore make me see it in a different way. It was brand new. It wasn't 15 years old. It was brand new. And understand the magnitude of those words. If I can, I'll take you guys on a little journey back into June 1998, after I'd been thrown off that massive cell structure the first time. Now, I learned in the United Kingdom not to say I was tossed off. It means something different over there. None of us want to think of The Undertaker that way. He's already lost the streak. The cell, for those of you who don't know, those of you who might not be wrestling fans, was a massive steel structure rumored to be upwards of 40 feet in the air. In truth, it was legitimate 16 feet. Ladies and gentlemen, once you've been thrown, not tossed, off a structure 6 feet taller than a basketball rim, there's really no need for further exaggeration. Although if Jim Ross wants to show up in the Foley bedroom, apply that same type of mathematics to the play-by-play, that might be appreciated. By God, look at the circumference. Just to your math fans out there. But after I was thrown off that steel structure that first time, they came out with a gurney stretcher on wheels and began wheeling me up that aisle, and everybody thought that match was over. Nobody would have thought less of me if it had been. But on that one night, I found the strength the fortitude to roll off that gurney, and I began ascending that massive steel structure one more time. Slowly, I'll grant you that. It was not a speedy journey, but it was completed with the peace of mind that can only come from knowing. Absolutely knowing. That can only come from absolutely knowing that the worst part of my evening was over with. That was my bad. Things got worse. They got a lot worse. The Undertaker slammed me on top of that cell. My body went through that mesh like a hot knife through butter. I hit that canvas and I was unconscious upon impact. When I say unconscious, when I say knocked out, I'm not talking about one of those referee Earl Hebner type of knockout either. Where he takes a glancing blow in the corner and his body loses all semblance of life.
He's through, Brad!
Yeah, he did screw Brett. Not literally. All right, just later. All right. To me, herein lies the irony of professional wrestling. Because if you're here as a wrestling fan or as a fan of ICP, you've been mocked or derided for your choices at one time or another. Probably many times, am I right? As wrestling fans, people go, why do you watch that stuff, that fake stuff, that phony stuff? And I'll go, all right, listen, man, I'll grant you, hold on, man. I'll grant you there are elements in that, in what we do, but I'll ask you to walk up to even the most ardent MMA enthusiast and say, hey man, does your sport continue when one of the participants is no longer conscious? Mine does. 2014 instead of 1998, that match would be stopped immediately. That'd be the correct move, the responsible move, but fortunately for me in a weird way, it was not the move that was made in 1998, because had it been the move made in 1998, no one would have been talking about that match a month down the road, let alone 16 years later. Because in WWE, in 1998, we didn't stop matches in WWE. We didn't stop matches. We didn't stop matches! We bought time. I can almost imagine Mr. McMahon behind the curtain going, buy him some time. And it was in the hopes of buying me time that Terry Funk with an N, I'm still at 0 on the F-bomb meter, right? He entered the ring. It was then that he and the Undertaker shared some words. Now, I'd probably seen that DVD 100 times, but the words were said so casually that it never once caused me to turn to my wife, my kids, any of the WWE superstars, or Al Snow, and say, hey, I wonder what Terry said. When I was standing there behind that curtain 6 feet away from Terry Funk in Madison Square Garden, he shared those words and sent a chill down my spine. He said, the Undertaker just walked by, casually turned his head and said, see if he's alive. See if he's alive. I think I'm fortunate I was knocked out, because had I just been coming to and heard that voice say, see if he's alive, it would have scared the crap out of me. So Terry actually walks over and checks on me, comes back to the Undertaker and reports that he's still breathing. At which point the Undertaker choke slammed Terry Funk, and in the process, Terry's shoes came off his feet. Now let's examine the evidence at hand here, okay? We got a story about 3 human beings. One who, with a broken bone in his foot, dropped a considerable distance, was limping noticeably inside that ring. That human being chokeslammed a second human being right out of his shoes. And they did it in the hopes of buying time for a third human being, previously thought to be deceased, so that they might buy enough time for that third human being to regain consciousness, so he might continue a fake wrestling match. That's hardcore. Now, upon regaining consciousness, and I was out by 92 seconds by my own count, I rolled very slowly over to my stomach. And after rolling very slowly over to my stomach, my next bodily move was a bob of my head. The reason I bobbed my head is because my first conscious thought was, where'd those shoes come from? Look at those shoes. And I tried to stand, but I fell back down like a newborn colt. It was the end. The Undertaker walked over me at that time. Remember, he had that long mane of dark hair, so when he leaned over, it was like a protective curtain. No one ever knew the words that were shared between me and the Undertaker. I ask you, what happens at the gathering stays at the gathering. Not going to share this with you and prepare to get a shiver down your spine. I'll never forget it. He just leaned down and said to me, "Hey there, fella." Can I ask you a question? Did it hurt? No. Rest assured, that's not what the Undertaker sounds like, all right? In truth, the words were even more ominous. There were only two of them. In truth, the Undertaker leaned down. He said two words. He just said, "Go home." And even if you're not a wrestling fan, you're pretty sure he wasn't talking about having me pack my bags and catch that next flight to Long Island. Because in wrestle speak, go home means what? Match is done. For those of you not aware of the Undertaker's reputation in the ring or in the dressing room, as a general rule, when he gives an order in the ring, it's not open to negotiation. But on that one night, for some reason I'll never know, something seemed to speak to me, something bigger than the two of us, something almost spiritual, and I found the strength to carry on, and we walked and worked our way into the pages of wrestling history. Now, it wasn't easy. After I knocked him off that top rope, I collapsed against the bottom turnbuckles, and I began assessing my situation. Unbeknownst to me, there had been a chair up on top of that cell that followed me down every foot of my journey and smashed into my face, doing considerable damage to my already considerably damaged dental work, causing one of my teeth to become lodged somewhere strange. Where was it? Nose. Once again, lucky I was not aware of that, because had I known there was a tooth lodged in my nose, I would have been embarrassed. A certain style I like to maintain. But I collapsed against that bottom turnbuckle. I began assessing my physical state, and I thought to myself, "Okay, Mick, you got a massive wound. You got a massive wound underneath your lip, and if you're gonna think of a way to take your tongue, stick it through that massive wound. If you can take your tongue, take your tongue. If you can take your tongue, stick it through that massive wound and wriggle it. You can find a way to take your tongue, stick it through that massive wound, and wriggle it. It's going to create some captivating television. Because that, I can just take that tongue, stick it through that massive wound, and go, But as it turned out, with the beard and the blood loss, you couldn't see my tongue at all, let alone wriggling. So therefore, Jim Ross was not incorrect when he made the immortal cry, "My goodness, look at him, he's smiling." In fairness to JR, this is kind of what it looked like. Now, when I was giving, personally, during my induction, not for throwing me off a cell in 1998, but for placing me on the world stage in WWE in 1996 with our match in the United States and around the world, because I'm pretty sure that had it not been for The Undertaker in 1996, I wouldn't be standing on that stage in 2013 in New York City, let alone this stage here, right here in Thornville, Ohio, in 2014. And I was told that as I was giving that speech, as I was thanking him, The Undertaker got as close to emotional as anyone has ever seen him. Keep in mind, he watches backstage on a monitor next to Mr. McMahon. I'm about to find that megaphone and stick it up your candy ass. Well, young man, you were obviously playing with a limited hand in the game of life. So go ahead and yell with your little microphone. Go ahead. Go for it, man. Jimmy Hart would appreciate the tribute. I was going to yell at him, but he's just so sad and pathetic looking. Nature's already dealt with you in a severe way, young man. No need for me to inflict further harm. He's a girl? My bad. Whoops. Thank you. I was going to call you brother, but you're not a brother or a dude. Thank you. All right. But turn that thing off in the next couple minutes. Will you do that, please? For me, the hardcore legend? All right. Thank you. Yeah, had it not been for the Undertaker, I would have been standing on that stage in New York City in 2013, let alone on this stage at the Gathering of the Juggalos in 2014. Told that while I was thanking him, the Undertaker got as close to emotional as anyone's ever seen him, keeping in mind that he doesn't watch the proceedings with the rest of the wrestlers and the fans and the crowd. And you might ask why. Go ahead and ask why. Because he's the Undertaker. Plays by a different set of rules. You don't cut to him during a commercial break and say, "Hey, always great to see the Undertaker." Everybody's thumb, yeah. So he's watching on a monitor backstage next to Mr. McMahon, getting as emotional as anyone's ever seen him. So when I walked off that stage, he was the first person I saw. I walked through that curtain, he greeted me, and he gave me a big hug. A big hug. And that's significant because he's not a hugger. He could be on this stage 100 nights in a row and the word wriggle is not going to leave his lips. He doesn't make sound effects like woo, 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 woo. But he saw fit to hug me, and it put the perfect ending to the most important night of my life. So at this point, 16 years after the fact, the only thing that haunts me about that evening, and I'm talking about keeping me awake at night type of haunting, is the conversation I'm told I had with referee Mike Chioda after the fact. You guys know who referee Mike Chioda is? Yeah. The WWE official who hasn't changed his personal appearance in 32 years. Looks exactly the same. According to Mike Chioda, our conversation went something like this. He said, "Cactus, we're bringing a stretcher out for you." And I raised my arm and I said, "Have I already been on a stretcher tonight?" And he said, "Yeah." I lifted my arm again, and I know on a certain level the reason I lifted my arm is I didn't want anybody in the Pittsburgh Civic Arena to see me talking. And I said, "Mike, I can't be on 2 stretchers in one night." And the part that scares me about that is I have no idea where that came from. No recollection of my dad sitting me down when I was 6 or 7 years old and going, "Son, you're going to be facing a lot of pressure in this lifetime. I don't care what the other kids in school do. I don't care how many stretchers they ride. You're a Foley, damn it! One stretcher for you." Have a nice night. Something else, this is very difficult for me to say. Fuck. Juggalo!